Welcome to episode 22 of Fearless Leaders, breaking growth barriers without breaking your piggy bank. My name is Megan Cherry, and I serve on staff right here at Life Church Michigan, which was recently named the 11th fastest growing church in America by Lifeway Research and Outreach Magazine. And right here in the studio with me is founding pastor Jonathan Herron. John, how's it going?
Oh my goodness, Megan. I am fired up. 2020, new year, new clean slate.
New decade.
There are plenty of people to impact and people to reach this year, and that's what fearless leadership is all about. It's about the peoples.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to all of our listeners. Did you get to do anything exciting? Did all of your 5 children stay up till midnight?
Oh, on New Year's Eve, oh my goodness, we went parasailing over the Pacific Ocean. And no, I'm kidding, yes. So I have 5 children, in case you don't know, and the majority are age 7 and younger. So we can't go anywhere.
That would be difficult.
The babysitting bill alone would put me in debt, and then Dave Ramsey would punch me in the throat. So no, we hunker down at Casa de Heron, and we flip between the channels of all the live shows,
I like it.
And we kind of make fun of them. So we watch a little bit of Ryan Seacrest, and I always make fun of him. It's almost like a drinking game, except I don't drink, because every New Year's Eve, Ryan Seacrest is live, and every 15 seconds he'll say, "And what a year it was." He says that over and over, right? It's like a drinking game. So we make fun of that. Then we watch Carson Daly, and then we watch CNN to make fun of Anderson Cooper and whoever that guy is that's with him. And that's what we do. And then we go to bed about 12:15.
Sounds like a great night.
It's awesome. I eat lots of sugar.
Yeah.
And now I'm on a fast, a no sugar.
Detoxing from the sugar.
Yes. How about you, Megan, though? New Year's Eve must be rowdy and crazy for you.
I just hung out with my cat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your cat's name?
His name is Gabe. Full name Gabriel, but goes by Gabe.
Like the angel.
Like the angel.
I've seen pictures of Gabe, and he looks like the cat owned by Captain Marvel, which is named Goose.
After you told me that, because I actually brought Gabe on webcam on one of our Fearless Leader coaching sessions with church leaders from around the country, I looked into Captain Marvel. I've decided she's my new spirit animal.
Heck yeah, she's the strongest of the Avengers.
Yeah.
And Captain Marvel is fearless, segue, and that's what this is all about. Listen, when a leader gets better, the whole church gets better, heaven gets more crowded, and you are just one hard decision away from accelerating, from breaking your church's growth barrier, but it requires you becoming fearless. So that's why I'm excited about what we get to do, encouraging and equipping church leaders like you. So thank you for listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube. We really appreciate the love and support. Hey, we got a bunch of resources coming out. The biggest one of all, nationwide, hitting bookshelves, is a re-release of my book, Holy Shift, Laugh Your Mass Off. It's all about comedy-driven leadership techniques to quickly reach people far from God, and it is out January 2020, and then there's a follow-up coming up in just a few months, a sequel that we debated over the name. We almost got into fisticuffs.
Into what?
Fisticuffs. Isn't that the way they used to say it in the 1800s?
I wasn't alive back then. I don't know. That was kind of sassy. I'm sorry.
Well, I can see Brennan, our sound technician, and he's nodding his head about fisticuffs. So no, we actually recorded a whole podcast, and we did it under a different name. And then we went off on this tangent of what are we going to name this new book. And the bonus video of it is on our YouTube channel, which is at Fearless Leadership. And we ended up bringing it full circle to Fearless Leadership.
Right where we started.
Yes. So the book Fearless Leadership is coming out in a few months. You'll want to check it out. Fearlessleaders.net has details. And I think there's stuff over on churchleaders.com, outreachmagazine.com, all those big guns.
Hey, well, speaking of books, our guest this week on the podcast actually wrote a book that you've read and you were telling us about, 20 Lessons That Build a Man's Faith, a conversational mentoring guide. So this was written by Vince Miller. Tell us a little bit about Vince Miller.
Yeah, Vince is so cool. He lives out in Minnesota. He started this men's group in his church, and it just accelerated, blew up, and now he does this full time, speaking to church leaders, pouring into making sure that men and women are healthy, right? Because if you're healthy things grow. And so I met Vince a few months ago in Colorado, blown away by his heart. He's written a ton of books, but this book in particular, I'm taking my 13-year-old son through, and I wanted to put it on the radar of fearless leaders everywhere.
Yeah. So we are going to throw it over to John and to Vince. You
You're
guys
throw
get
it over
a little...
to me? Throw it over to me. I'm right here. Throw it over, Megan.
We can actually...
Let me run over there so you can throw it to me over there.
You know what? I'll let you do the introduction then.
Here it is on the Fearless Leadership Podcast, my sit down with author and speaker, Vince Miller. And stay tuned because at the very end we have a giveaway you don't want to miss out on. So here we go, Vince Miller on Fearless Leadership. Hey everybody, Jonathan Herron here with my new friend Vince Miller. And Vince has got some amazing things happening in his ministry based out of Minnesota. His latest book, 20 Lessons That Build a Man's Faith, a conversational mentoring guide. And Vince, thank you so much.
You bet, man.
For carving out time with us.
Yeah, you bet.
So Fearless Leaders is all about encouraging, equipping church leaders, primarily 20, 30, 40-somethings. Mm-hmm. So a lot of us have too much testosterone. No offense to the ladies out there, but we are the risk takers. Yeah. And I'm imagining that you've had a front row seat to seeing the good and the bad of fearless leaders. So we'd love to hear about your journey and have you speak into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we think we're fearless when we really aren't. You know, when I started Resolute, which is the ministry that I developed all these resources under, I was pushed into that by my wife, believe it or not. So it was a great woman behind me pushing on me, because sometimes we think we're fearless and we're really not. Mm-hmm. We act that way, but deep in our heart, we're scared and ashamed and concerned and fearful rather than fearless. So I'll tell you a little bit about that occurrence because I think it's extremely relevant to this. But I remember one day, me and my wife were talking. I was working in one of the 5 largest churches in the country. She said, I think you need to take a stab at this ministry thing. And it happened to be on Valentine's Day. I'd taken her out to eat.
You gave her chocolates and she gave you a new trajectory.
A new path for my life. And, we're sitting there, we're talking, and she said, I think you need to turn this little men's group that you were doing into a ministry. I said to her on Valentine's Day, no joke, you're crazy. And then she said back to me, she said, Vincent Lee Miller, I am not crazy. Don't ever call me crazy.
So how did it feel sleeping on the couch that night?
It didn't feel all that great. And, she really got strong with me. She just said, no, I think you're going to do this. And she says, and by the way, you better not fail. And it was actually the experience of that voice that she spoke into me that helped me to understand what I think being fearless is really about. Fearless has something to do with receiving an actual message from God himself about what we're called to do. And the other side of fearless, I think, is putting ourselves in a situation that we can't back out of. I call it going all in, as the hat says, right?
I'm digging your hat.
Yeah, like I call it going all in. It's us putting ourselves in a situation from which we can't retrieve. Like we can't back out of it, where we've burned all the bridges behind us, and because we're forced to lean into it, that God then thus has to show up, and then we have to rely upon him. And so that's some of the insemination of this whole idea, and I bet that's a lot of what it is too for people leading the church and kind of venturing out in those experiences.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you talk about having to walk out in faith,
right?
you have to be resolute.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the areas that you speak into?
Yeah, absolutely. So predominantly what I do today is I develop resources for guys just like this book, 20 Lessons That Build a Man's Faith. And I speak on major topics that are relevant to men. So masculinity, fatherhood, mentoring, discipleship. I think all the predominant topics that really men are struggling with and really have a hard time understanding how to do as they're engaging with their church, relationship with Christ, and their marriage with their kids, whatever it may be, even in just general leadership. And so resources like this one, and I have a number on the website, but guides like this, like 20 Lessons That Build a Man's Faith, they're just short discussions, short chapters with a question-asking process built into it that I think mobilize a man. And what I want to see happen in our culture and our churches today is to see us mobilize men and move them from the bench, spiritual bench, to the spiritual game, get them out in it and experiencing, I think, what many of your young pastors are experiencing. They experience not just an adrenaline rush from it, they experience the mission of God. And I believe more men should experience that.
Absolutely. So, Vince, when we talk about daddy wounds,
Yeah.
and we even go back in American history, you look at, we used to be an agricultural society, the Industrial Revolution happens, and so dad goes to work, sons are now with their moms primarily, so that was a big shift. Then World War I, World War II, we send soldiers to war, dad is absent once again, he comes back, he doesn't know what to do with his emotions. And then you have the 70s, the sexual revolution. So we have emotionally absent dads.
Yep.
We have now church leaders who grew up in the first fatherless generation. Step into that landmine.
Yeah.
Help us understand that and help us. What would you say to this fatherless generation?
Yeah, I think your descriptors there and even how you're describing history is a big component of why we're experiencing what I call the ABT generation, the ain't been taught generation. You know what I mean?
That's right.
It's. I mean, I think the absence of fathers does create a deep wound, not only in men but also in women. And I think everybody's longing for a healthy relationship, not just with an earthly father, with a spiritual father. And I believe that everyone wants to hear, not just Jesus, everyone wants to hear the words, "This is my son, in whom I'm well pleased. This is my daughter, in whom I'm well pleased." And I think the thing that heals that is the understanding that we have a relationship with a loving Father who's compassionate, gracious, kind, loving, forgiving, merciful, etc. And I think that's where it all begins. If we can develop an understanding of that, especially among leaders, and then if we can help those leaders to communicate that to the people sitting in the pews of our churches, the people joining with us in the mission of God, I think we'll create the healing of that wound. But then we have to take it to the next level. We have to show people how to do it because they ain't been taught. And you have to break it down into very simple, practical steps that I think everybody understands. Let me give you an example of it. You can tell people that they need to pray. We can inspire people around it. We can motivate them. We can even shame them when they don't pray. But if we don't teach someone actually how to pray and actually a model for prayer and to use it successfully over a period of time, then they really ain't been taught. So we've got to break these things down very simply, because I really believe that what we're experiencing today is a break in the discipleship mandate. I think all these historical things that you mentioned just a little while ago are a break in the discipleship mandate. When we break that, we thus not only don't learn that we need to engage the discipline of prayer, but we also don't know how to do it. And I think knowing how to do it is far more critical. And we can apply this in anything, just reading the Bible. You can tell me all day to read the Bible, but buying a Bible isn't reading the Bible. And everybody has a Bible on their shelf. I mean, everybody has a Bible. Even non-Christians have Bibles on their shelves. But then to teach someone how to read the Bible, which is different to read than any other book of the Bible, is a tool that you're going to give someone after they understand they have a loving Father. Then they need to get to know the loving Father. And the only way to know the loving Father is to be taught how to use the tools that they're given. And so I believe that this is a call to help men and women understand that not only God loves us, but that he wants to demonstrate his love for us by us engaging simple disciplines and learning how to do it by loving brothers and sisters that will show us how.
What advice would you give to a 20-something, a 30-something guy who has just discovered a new journey with Jesus Christ? They grew up in a home where prayer is absent, and they say, okay, I want to be the difference in my family tree. I'm going to lead my wife, my children, but I don't know how to pray. Yeah. What would be some pro tips? Or I'm sure going into the books it's deeper, but just off the top of your head, I'm putting you on the spot.
No, this is great. This is actually one of the chapters in here deals with the PERM method. So I try to get people to practice simple methods. So in this book, we teach the ACTS method, which is a very well-known method. I don't even know who created it. I've tried to find it, but I can't find it anywhere. But it's ACTS.
Copyright it.
It's mine. Yeah, it's mine. I came up with it. ACTS, which stands for Adoration, Confession, Thanksgiving, and kind of an old word, supplication, which means to ask for things. I just tell people to practice this. This is a rhythm. Try it for 5 minutes every day. Adoration, which is to give praise to God. Confession, which is to confess or agree with God. Thanksgiving, give thanks for what's around you. And then last, ask for something. Supplicate, right? I don't think people understand this because it's strange when you think about it, right? Because we ain't been taught that I'm supposed to have a conversation with someone who's not sitting in front of me, who, by the way, may not immediately talk back to me like we're talking. You just tell someone to go pray. They don't get that. So you got to walk them through some experiences. Yeah, I know it's strange to pray to an unseen God, but just take the step and repeat the pattern for a period of time, right? Set an alarm on your watch or your phone and just do it a few times a day and start with 5 minutes a day. That's it. Just do that 5 minutes a day. And then after 30 days, we'll up the game a little bit. Maybe we'll change things around. We'll try a new method. But I try to get guys, especially who are young in their faith, just to take these small steps. It's not that they don't know that they should. It's that they don't know how. Again, ABT ain't been taught.
We're talking with Vince Miller, author of 20 Lessons That Build a Man's Faith. In just a few minutes, we're going to tell you how you can win a free copy of Vince's new book. But I want to ask you about technology, because you just mentioned phones and watches. So the blessing of technology is we have wealth of information, but the dark side is that over half of the traffic on the internet is pornography.
Yeah.
And it's every man's battle. Nobody wants to talk about it. I have 5 kids, 3 that are sons. And give me some advice. Give me some help.
For those boys?
What do you do if you're the dad of a kid that's about to get a smartphone? What do you do if you're listening right now and you have this hidden sin? Could you speak into that? It's kind of a wide open question.
Yeah, that's a big one, and I think it's a very important one. We can't deny the fact that the internet's not going away. Whenever who invented that thing,
I thought it was a fad.
Yeah. Whenever whoever invented that thing created it, I think they had no idea what it was going to turn into. And we live in a human experiment, right? Everything's a human experiment. Even our country's a human experiment. And so we get to test these things out, whether it be pornography, whether it be vaping, whether it be the change of delivery of THC, whether it be the internet or whatever it is. And then we have to understand how to use these as a tool both for good and bad, right? And unfortunately, I think the prevalence of how prevalent pornography is very unfortunate, because it creates damaging effects on all of culture, I believe. We have a responsibility as men to stand into that gap, I believe, and especially with young people in the houses, we can filter things, we can try to prevent things, but I think most importantly, we need to be talking about things, and we need to be having the conversation. Every one of my children, I've had conversations with them multiple times, not one time, multiple times, about how to engage this, how to use it as a tool, and then to understand what their eyes are looking at and how they're using these things as a tool for the benefit of their own lives and for others. And it's very, very challenging. You can't prevent people from not using the internet. They're going to be exposed to it. Some of the tips that I tell people are this, and I think this is perhaps the biggest one, just a pro tool, is, we need to stop certain behaviors, but we also have to fill our life with other behaviors that are more glorious. For example, you can't tell a guy just to stop looking at the internet or put some sort of internet protective tool on his devices to ensure that he doesn't look at it. You actually have to give him something glorious to look at, something more beautiful, right? Because you can't just empty a void without filling it, because God wants us to desire. He actually gave us desires. Desires can be negative and positive, can be intrinsically motivated and extrinsically motivated. And that's what's so interesting about desires, is it's all multifaceted. If we turn off a negative internal motivation that we really want, or a negative external motivation that we really want, we have to replace it with something more positive. And I think this is where the desire of God comes to play. If you turn back to Genesis 3, this is how it all plays out. Man had a desire and God fulfilled it. Actually, Genesis 2 fulfilled it by creating woman. The best way for us to have our desires fulfilled is to allow God to actually create them, fulfill them in a rightly ordered way by giving us what our heart's desires that's beautiful. And he gave us in a relationship. We can mutilate the understanding of that relationship to objectify women, or we can actually glorify God by giving women their beauty back and their dignity and their honor, right? So we have to learn not just to not objectify women, we have to learn to honor women. And I would say that's how we defeat this thing, is we learn how to honor women in our life by not objectifying them and not just shutting off ourselves from the internet completely and just putting protective tools on it. It's filling this gaping hole with something more beautiful.
Man, that's good.
You like that?
I really appreciate you sharing that. That helps me as a dad.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Because if you can teach your kids how to love women the right way, I've had a lot of conversations with my kids. In fact, I got one in college. I just wrote an article for him called Love Women and gave him about 6, 7, 8 points in there on how to love and honor women. I think, don't just not objectify women, learn how to love these women and honor them as a great man would.
Is that article online?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just search Love Women on my website, you'll find it.
So what's your website? If we want to find you online, how do we do that? Because
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be looking at all your materials now.
It's beresolute.org, so beresolute.org, or you could just navigate to my name, vincemiller.com, and you'll land on the website.
And you've also got a killer online merch shop.
I like
that
the
hat.
hats right here,
The
man.
all in.
Yeah, I got the all in hats.
So Vince Miller, author extraordinaire, the latest is 20 Lessons That Build a Man's Faith, a conversational mentoring guide. We would love to get this into the hands of one of our listeners.
Yeah.
And here's how you get this. If you're listening on the podcast, Apple or Google or wherever, you need to hit pause. Go to YouTube and subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Fearless Leadership. Fearless Leadership. We want you to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and comment below with what state you are tuning in from. And in 1 week, one lucky winner will be chosen by random for Vince Miller's new book. Does that sound like a good deal?
That sounds like a great deal, man.
And we're going to put in the show notes links to your sites, your articles.
Yeah.
I really appreciate not just your time, but how you're stepping into this area that we need fearless leaders in. And you're one of them, buddy.
Great. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
And I'll forgive you for being a Minnesota Vikings guy. I'm from Michigan.
Yeah, so. I know. Don't feel bad. It's not going to be a great year. I just said that out loud.
Wow. Thank you to our special guest, Vince Miller. He's written a ton of books, but once again, 20 Lessons That Build a Man's Faith is the book that we kind of zeroed in on. Highly recommend it. You got to check it out. In fact, I want to get this book into everyone's hands. So, Megan, let's do something crazy.
What are we going to do?
Not only do we have the Fearless Leadership podcast, we also have a YouTube channel. And if you go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to Fearless Leadership, click the bell, ding.
Does it make that noise when you click it?
I don't know, does it? That would be really cool if it did.
That would be really cool.
Anyhow, go subscribe to Fearless Leadership on YouTube. And then in the comments for this video, episode 22 of Fearless Leadership, just leave a comment with your first name and what state you're watching from. And within the next 7 days, we're going to pick one winner at random, and you will receive a copy of Vince Miller's book, 20 Lessons That Build a Man's Faith, absolutely free.
Because that's how we like to start out the year, with free
Heck yeah.
stuff.
Free stuff. Come on. Subscribe, ding that bell, and comment with your name and state. That's all you got to do. You could be a winner. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Megan is already rushing to YouTube to subscribe so she can win a copy of the book.
I'm already subscribed.
That's right, because you're super hip.
But I'm definitely going to race over there to comment because I want the free book.
Do it.
Am I in the running? Am I eligible?
Yeah, you need 20 lessons that build a man's faith. That's right up your alley. That's for you, Megan. Oh, brother. Anyhow, you don't want to miss a single episode of Fearless Leadership in the new year. So, Megan, how do people stick with us here?
Well, head over to Apple Podcasts. You can go to Stitcher. You can go to Spotify, all the big ones. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find us. So we would love if you hopped over there, gave us a 5-star review. Just helps us get in front of more people so we can help more people grow their churches and help more leaders be fearless, just like you.
Absolutely. And there's a ton of free resources at fearlessleaders.net, as well as our network membership, where church leaders just like you from around the country receive live, personal online coaching every single week. We have a lot of fun with that, Megan, don't we?
That's so much fun. Yeah.
Megan's tunes in every single Wednesday, and sometimes your cat Gabe makes an appearance.
Makes a special appearance, yeah.
But
Keeps
it is
interesting.
It is interesting. But what a privilege it is to pour into church leaders, organizational, movement leaders, and to not only encourage but equip them with the latest, freshest resources that is happening out here. So that's a lot of fun. Fearlessleaders.net has all the details.
And if people want to connect with you, where do they find you?
At High Five John, at High Five JON on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'd love to connect with you. Lots of fun. And we got to get Gabe his own Instagram account. Gabe the Cat.
He's going to become famous. It's fine.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
He could be the new face of
Fearless Leaders.
Fearless Leaders. Yeah, we could have little Gabe plush kitty cats that. I don't know. That'd be crazy. I think we've reached the end of episode 20. What is this? 22?
22.
Holy cow!
I know.
We are legal now, aren't we? This is great. So next week we got episode 23 coming your way. You don't want to miss that. Upcoming episodes will include an exclusive interview with Lee Strobel, author of The Case for Christ. And yeah, I know.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I didn't tell you that.
That's news to me. No.
Dr. Lee Strobel is going to be a guest on Fearless Leadership coming up in just a few weeks. So you'll want to tune in for that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And maybe we'll have Gabe the Cat on next week.
Do we need a new tagline for 2020? Or do we keep our old one?
Brennan, the sound technician, came up with "Laugh Your Mass Off," which is great for Catholics. Do you have any ideas for a sign off?
I think that's hard to beat. I say we stick with that one.
So there you go. Seize 2020 and enjoy your burrito.